Doing
Right.
good. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I love you and I just thank you for your word, Lord God. I thank you how it speaks to our hearts, Lord Heavenly Father, that it gets down deep into our hearts and the intentions of our hearts and our mind. And I pray, Lord God, as we dig into it this morning, that we can just better understand you and your ways and just better understand your word. And I pray that you be here with me and just help me along. And I pray that you just soften all of our hearts and open all of our ears. And I just love you and praise you in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right. So today I'm going to take a break from Hebrews, the faith stuff, and I'm going to talk about anger today. It's something that we all deal with, anger. Something everybody deals with it, and so I'm going to talk about it today. And I've been doing a Bible study too that kind of talked about some of this stuff last week, and I don't know, I was dealing with it during the week, and then at our Bible study we talked about it, and so I just figured it's something I would talk about today. So, but there's three types of anger that I'll just say these three types of anger, but there's one of them that I really want to focus on because it's very it's prevalent within all of us. But the first out of the three types of anger, the first one is there's wrongly placed anger, right? There's anger that we have that we wrongly place it. And when I think about that, I thought about 1 Samuel 25, and I preached on this before with Daniel, or with David and Nadab, right? Abigail's father. David had a wrongly placed anger towards him, and I want to just look at it real fast. So over in 1 Samuel chapter 25, so David and his men, they're out doing their thing. Saul's been chasing David, right, trying to kill him and all those things. Well, David, there's this man Nadab, and David had protected his people before. He had taken care of them, protected them, gave them shelter. And so David, he hears that Nadab's out. He's about to start shearing his sheep and doing it. It's harvest time or whatever, I'm guessing. And David's going to send his men to like, hey, send us some provisions. You know, out in the wilderness, we took care of your guys. We done all these things for your guys. We kept them safe, took care of them, fed them, all that good stuff. So we're just asking for you to do the same thing for us, to help us out. And I want to show you this. Starting in verse 4, it says, when David heard in the wilderness that Nabal, it's not Nadab, it's Nabal, was shearing his sheep, David sent 10 young men, and David said to the young men, go up to Carmel, go to Nabal, and greet him in my name, and thus you shall say to him who lives in prosperity, peace be to you, peace to your house, and peace to all that you have. We did not, now I have heard that you have shearers, your shepherds were with us, and we did not hurt them, nor was there anything missing from them all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and your son David. So David sends his men to this guy, and he's like, hey, help us out. We've helped your guys out before. Can you help us out, right? We've done you right, you do us right. So so it goes on and it says, so David's young, I'll just keep reading. It says, so when David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal according to all these words in the name of David, and waited. Then Nabal answered David's servants and said, who is David, and who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away each one from his master. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men when I do not know where they are from? You see that this guy's like, who is David? This guy, I'm not helping him out. I don't care what he's done for me. I ain't helping him out. And so these men, they go back and tell David, and there in verse 12 it says, so David's young men turned on their heels and went back, and they came and told him all these words. Then David said to his men, every man gird on his sword. So every man girded on his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And about 400 men went with David, and 200 stayed with the supplies. So you see this, David's like, I did this man right, he did me wrong, let's go kill him. He just jumps straight in, let's go kill this guy. And this is what I'm talking about with wrongly placed anger. David was going to go there. He wasn't just going to kill Nabal. He was going to go kill him and all his men, all the men that worked for him, the men that he protected at one time, the men that he helped out at one time that didn't do him no wrong. These men didn't do him any wrong. The guy doing him wrong is Nabal. And David's like, I'm about to go kill Nabal and I'm going to kill all his men. He was mad. He was angry because this guy wasn't treating him the way he thought he should, right? That's exactly what he was doing. He had that mentality. A lot of us have it today. I help you out, you better help me out. If I do you right, you better do me right. And that's a lot of Christians have that attitude. And if you don't treat them the way that they treated you, they'll flip out. You're condemned, you're a piece of trash because you didn't do me like I did you. And that should never be our attitude as Christians. We should never have that type of attitude. Now, I understand you can get aggravated, especially when you spend so much time helping people and doing good for people, and then they turn their backs on you, or they backstab you, or when you need help, they don't come help, right? They don't want nothing to do with you. That can be aggravating, but it should never cause us to just be like, die. You know, that's how people react to things, and that's what David's doing here. He wrongly places his anger. But I love, and David even shows that his anger was wrong whenever 32 after Abigail comes to him, and she's like, look, stop what you're doing. Don't go, I'll help you out. Listen what David says here in 32. It says, then David said to Abigail, blessed is the Lord God of Israel who sent you this day to meet me. And blessed is your advice, and blessed are you, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed and from avenging myself with my own hand. You see that? He's saying, I was taking things into my own hand, and that's what we do. People do us wrong or something, we take things into our own hands rather than allowing God to avenge us. He's the one, vengeance is his, is what he says, not ours to take. So we have wrongly placed anger, then there's rightly placed anger. When I think of rightly placed anger, it's, I think of Jesus in the temple, right? He was angry, flipping them tables over because people were they were treating people unjustly, right? They was taking advantage of the people in the temple, and Jesus says, hey, he goes in there flipping tables. Now we know everything Jesus did was righteous and holy, it was right, so we see that there is a right type of anger. And I even think if somebody was to hurt my wife or my kids, I would get angry, and I would rightly so be angry. If somebody was to hurt my wife, kids, or one of y'all in front of me, and I get angry, that's a right type of anger. That is. And then, so this third kind of anger that I want to spend some time talking about is suppressed anger. Now, this is something I think so many people deal with, and this is how I deal with a lot of things. When I get angry, it's suppressed anger. I suppress things. Like, I don't always have the best communication skills when it comes to stuff, like just getting stuff off my chest. Somebody does me wrong, I'll take it in and kind of bury it. And I might keep that thing for years and not even think about it. It'll be down in there for years and I'll never think about it. And then one day something will pop up and that'll come out of me, and then things will start spewing out of me. And it's like, where did this come from? And it's something that I call like suppressed anger. It's like when I think about it, I think about when I was a kid. One time my grandma, she was babysitting me, my mom on Maryland, she used to babysit me and my little brother. And I was in and I used to love to play with fire. I absolutely loved it. And so one time I burnt like a quarter of my dad's house down, set my little brother on fire, playing with gas and fire. And then, so right after I burnt my dad's part of his house down, he got it all fixed. I don't know where I seen it, but I seen somebody like taking cologne or hairspray and going, and I was like, oh, that is so cool. I got to do this. Well, my dad and them, they would hide lighters and stuff because I like to play with fire. So I found a can of his little Polo cologne, the old school Polo colognes, and I found me a lighter. And we had an igloo doghouse in our backyard under some pine trees. So I sneak in this doghouse and I got this cologne And I was sitting in there going, and I'm like, this is like the coolest thing ever. Just these flames. So then I got some pine needles in there. And I'm like, then, you know, it would hit them, and they never flamed up, but they were in there smoldering. They were just sitting in there smoldering, and I didn't think nothing about it. I was like, oh, you know, there's a little smoke there, a little smolder, no big deal. So I go back in the house, and I mean, I'd been in the house for a long time. This was like way later in the day, but my grandma looks out the door, and she's like, we gotta call the fire department. And I look out the back fence, and the whole back fence is just blowing flames. I mean, just caught on fire. And that's what I think about with that suppressed anger. You know, it's kind of like a little smolder, right? It's something that sits in there and it kind of smolders and smolders. And then later on down the road, it just turns into this, one day it just, and it's like, where did that come from? And that thing's been smoldering for a while. It's been around there for a while. And this is something, like I said, so many people deal with it. And we don't talk about this kind of stuff. And it's because I don't know why we don't, but we have to learn to deal with those things that we suppress, that we keep down in there, to learn to communicate, you know. And that's one of my biggest issues. And I think about it. So one day at work, I'd been saved for probably 3 or 4 years, and before I was saved, if I got angry, I just expressed it. Like, I didn't suppress nothing. I just, either my actions or my mouth, I just expressed how I felt. But after I got saved and God changed my heart, I would try to be cognizant of how the way I reacted to people, or how the way I was, you know, how people would portray me. And so I had to learn some self-control and be like, yeah, I'm angry, but I need to kind of process this before I say something, or the way I act. Well, so there was this guy at work, and I kind of worked for him, but I didn't. But he would blame stuff on people and just do stuff, and I would never say nothing about it. I would just take it all in. And over time, it took a couple years, but over time it just built and built. And I wasn't even, and it was one of the things, it just built up, and I guess I wasn't just paying attention to it building up in me. And one day my main boss pulls up to me in a truck, and he starts going off on something this guy said that I didn't do, and just at that one moment, and it wasn't even this main boss's fault, but I called him everything you could imagine. I just fell apart on this dude, and probably made him feel about this big, and it wasn't even his fault. The stuff going on it really didn't have much to do with him, but because of my lack of communication and my lack of taking care of, I guess you could say, taking care of the things that were bothering me, I just explode on this guy. And, you know, not only does that affect him, but then it affects my witness. It makes me look like an idiot. And for the longest time, and after that, I thought, man, why did I do that? You know, you drive off from that, and it's like, what in the world is wrong with me? And then you got to go back and apologize, and everyone knows no one wants to have to apologize. I mean, when you got to humble yourself and be like, I did it, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have been acting that way. That's hard, but it happens. But so I want to turn to a story today that kind of has something to do with this. Over with David and Goliath is where I want to go over here, because there's some anger in this story that some people don't see, and it has to do with this suppressed type anger that I'm talking about. But over in 1 Samuel, so as you know, this is David and Goliath. Everyone knows the story of David and Goliath. But there's a lot of history here, right, with the Philistines leading up to this. This ain't the first time the Israelites have fought the Philistines. Like, there's a history here of them, and you see it all through the Old Testament. The Israelites and the Philistines, the Israelites and the Philistines. Sometimes Israel would win, sometimes they'd lose. So there's this history here when they come to this point of fighting Goliath. So leading up to fighting Goliath, we see David, he was at home, and his dad tells him, hey, I want you to go down there and I want you to check on your brothers, right? And listen to this. It says, Where should I start at? I'll start here in verse 17. It says, Then Jesse said to his son, Take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp, and carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. So David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper, and took the things, and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to fight and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. And David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. Then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines, and he spoke according to the same words. So David heard them, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and dreadfully afraid. So the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel, and shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, What shall be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in this manner, saying, So shall it be done for the man who kills him. Now listen to this. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David. You see this? So David comes down and he's like, Who's this guy? Defying the armies of God, I'll fight him. Like, he's just kind of taking in, like, what'll be done? I'll get all this stuff. I mean, this will affect my whole family. No taxes, none of that stuff will be taken care of. To fight this uncircumcised Philistine who's coming against God, all this will be done. And then his brother immediately. Now his oldest brother heard when he spoke to the men. Eliab's anger was aroused against David. And listen what he says. Why do you come down here? He's asking David, why are you even here? He's questioning his motive. No one wants people to question their motives, right? We don't even like that. He's saying, what are you even doing here? And then look, and he says, with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? Like, who have you... He's questioning his motive. He's belittling. You know, whom have you left those few sheep? You're just a little shepherd boy. Who have you even left them little sheep with? And then look what he says. He hits him on his character. He says, I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. He starts judging his heart. And I think about this. It says his anger was aroused. Where did this anger even come from? I don't think it was just a spur of the moment deal. I think this goes all the way back. When Samuel showed up at the house, God said, hey, go to Jesse's house. I'm going to have you anoint the next king. Right? Eliab's the oldest son. It was natural. He thought, I'm a stud. I'm the oldest boy. You know he's going to pick me. He steps up. Nope, not him. All these other boys step up. And then here comes the old run of the litter. Outside with the sheep. Bring him in, and God picks him. God anoints him. So you just imagine, he probably had some jealousy in him, and David hasn't done anything wrong. He ain't even the one, he didn't do anything different than the other brothers. He's just doing what he's, just being a kid doing his thing. And I bet Eliab, he's also probably put two and two together that my brother's about to kill this giant. He's about to go out there and slay. Like, he could have been bragging on him, but no, he's sitting here belittling him, you know. Where'd you leave them few sheep, you little shepherd, huh? Where'd you leave them? Why are you even here? I see your heart. Your heart's all jacked up. He's just kind of talking down on him. And you know he probably knows, before David even talks to Saul about killing this lion and a bear, you know David's told his brothers about it. And his dad, I bet he had a bear rug in the house from when he killed. I was thinking about that this morning. I wonder if he chopped its head off and like mounted it like we do deer and stuff. Because you know if one of y'all killed one with your bare hands, you'd have a bear rug in the house. I know I would. And I'd tell everybody about it. And that's what, you know his brother's sitting there like he's God's anointed him. He's about to do this thing. And I think that's what it goes back to over time. Because when you think about it, David was what? I was trying to look up how old people thought he was. And some people think when he was anointed, he would have been between like 10 and maybe 14, 15-ish. And by the time he got here to fight David, he would have been between like 15 to 19, because you can see that he's not old enough to be in the military yet, or he would have probably been down there fighting with his brothers. And that would have been, he'd have had to have been 20 years old. So he's somewhere right in there. So there's probably been some years passed between when he was anointed, when his brothers were told, nope, 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 we're picking David, to this point, to where David shows up. So you know over time, his brothers, that they probably stewed on this, the oldest one especially. He's probably stewed on this stuff, and now he has his opportunity to pounce. And he pounces on him. And I love how David answers him, though, and there in 29 it says, and David said, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? It says, then he just turned from him. And it says he turned from him toward another and said the same thing, and these people answered him as the first ones did. And that makes me think of Proverbs 12:16. It says a fool is quick-tempered. You know, that day I lost my temper, I was a fool. That's what I was. I just exploded. It was like a quick. Now that's not the makeup of who I am, but that day I was quick-tempered. I was foolish. I was. And it says, but a wise person stays calm when insulted. And that's what David does here. You know, he had to have been insulted by what his brother's saying. I wonder, David, he might have looked up to his brothers and all that stuff. That's kind of reading into it because it don't say that, but I'm sure it's his older brother. You know, maybe he looked up to him and all that stuff, and now he's sitting here just being like, nope. In his anger, he's kind of belittling him, pretty much telling him that he's nothing. But it says, like I said, Proverbs 12:16 says, a fool is quick-tempered, but a wise person stays calm when insulted. And you see this with people, with myself. How do you react when you're insulted? How do you react when you're insulted? Are you quick to jump on things? Or are you quick-tempered, or are you able to just be like, okay, it is what it is. It is what it is. So many people, they're so quick-tempered, they're just, you insult me, I'm going to insult you, or I'm going to belittle you, I'm going to tear you down to the ground. That's how people are. They do it a lot. James 1:19 and 20 says, so then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Our anger, especially suppressed anger or the wrongly placed type anger, it doesn't ever produce the righteousness of God. It never does, and it never will. Whenever we wrongly place our anger, or we have this suppressed anger in us that just comes out when the opportunity presents itself, it never produces God's righteousness. It never does, and it hurts many of people. And the thing is, when we have that stuff in us, it's hurting us, because now we're a bad witness. Now we're looking like a fool. Now when we do it, then our conscience gets defiled. So now we don't have peace, we don't have joy, and we let these things eat us up. Psalm 37:7-9 says, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it only causes harm. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. You see this, I love how he says, cease from anger, forsake wrath. Do not fret, it only causes harm. And what's he talking about beforehand? These people who bring forth these wicked schemes and do all this wicked stuff. It's easy to look around and get aggravated. It is. It's easy to look around and get angry and want to call down God's wrath on people. You look around and you're like, man, you just get angry when you see how people act, the things they do, how unappreciative people are. It makes you angry. But we have to understand, we have to forsake our anger and forsake our wrath. And like he says, their day's going to come when they'll be cut off. God will take care of business for us. We need only to love God, to serve him, and to glorify and honor him. Ecclesiastes 7:8-9 says, the end of a thing is better than its beginning. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Do not hasten in your spirit to be angry, for anger rests on the bosom of fools. And I think, why does he say that? Because when you get angry and you act on it, you look like a fool. It makes you foolish. It makes you look foolish. It makes me look foolish. And I deal with this stuff like anyone else. I do. I get angry like everybody else, and I deal with it like everybody else. But one of the things that God's really worked on me is I have to learn to communicate. Because I'm telling you, communication is one of the biggest things when it comes from me. Just to be able to communicate the way I feel and do it properly, which is hard for me to do sometimes. Because I have a tendency to be passive, and I know I do. And in being passive, guess what? I just take stuff and I just take it in, and I do. And I have this mindset that whatever, I just let it go. It is what it is. When I need to learn to sometimes just vent and let my feelings out there, right? That's kind of what I had to do this week, talking to my wife, just vent things. And I don't usually do that. I'm not that type of person. Proverbs 29:11 says, a fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. You see that? A fool, he lets it all out there, but a wise man holds things back. He don't express everything. Proverbs 22:24-25 says, make no friendship, this one hits me. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go, lest you learn his ways and set a snare for your soul. How true is that verse? You get to hanging around with somebody who's angry all the time or got a bad attitude all the time. Tell me that don't rub off on you. I see it all the time at work. People get angry, they're mad, they're bitter at work, so they start, man, the boss says I can make this, I can make more money. They start talking all that, and guess what? Old boy over here jumps on board. Then you walk off doing something and you start thinking about it. It's like, man, they do. So then you come back over here and you're like, yeah, they do treat us like that. They do this. And then you hop on board. Now everybody's mad, bitter, and angry and wanting the wrath to come down on the job. And I see this stuff all the time. And this is what I talked to my wife about this week. I was like, I don't want to be like that. I was like, these guys at work, the way they feel, they just express it like I used to before I was saved. And I told my wife, I said, how they're expressing it is how I feel inside. And I see it, and I'm aware of it, and I need to deal with it. And that's what I want to be. I always want to be aware of the way I feel about stuff, and not, because I don't want to turn into that, to where I'm out here just, this is horrible, so bad. I honestly want to be able to thank God that I have a job, and I have the job that I have, and keep that in the right perspective. But moving on from there, Ephesians 4:25-32 says, therefore, putting away all lying, let each one of you speak truth with his neighbor. For we are members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. Let him who stole steal no longer, but rather let him labor, working with his hands what is good, that he may have something to give him who has need. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, for whom you have been sealed for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And right there, he's speaking to Christians. He says, you've got to learn to put these things away. All the anger, all the bitterness, the wrath, you've got to put these things away from you. I know we feel them, we see things, they make us angry, but we have to learn to do away with that stuff. And here in a minute, I'm going to talk about how we can do that. Colossians 3:8-10 says, but now you yourselves are to put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. I read that list and I think he starts off right. Anger. That's where it starts. And then guess what comes after anger? The wrath. And then you have the malice. And then from anger also comes blasphemy and filthy language, right? You get anger and you blow up, the whole top blows off. You hear words, you start making up words. It's like, what was that one? And that's whenever your spouse says, you don't want to know. And it's not funny, but it is, because it's true. It's real life. We hold things back, and then that top blows off, and that's why Paul's telling these Christians here, if you read before, there in Colossians chapter 3, verses 8 and 10, if you read before that, the preceding verses, he talks about you've put to death the old ways, right? You should abstain from sexual immorality and all this stuff. He goes through all these steps. Well, then he gets here and he says, but now you yourselves are to put off these things. Because these things right here are things that we all deal with even after we're saved. He's saying, now you need to be putting off the anger, the wrath, the malice. You got to deal with these things too. See, when you got saved and God heals you, right? The outwardly things that we do, a lot of people like with the sexual immorality and, you know, stealing and doing drugs and these outwardly things we do, people they kind of start to quit those things. But then there's this inner stuff that we don't deal with. We're like, well, I'm good. All these outwardly things I've kind of fixed. I'm looking good. But these inwardly things, the anger, the wrath, the way we feel inside, people kind of will neglect those things. They will. And we have to deal with those things too. And Romans 12, 17 through 21 says this. Now, this is a good one. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. That's hard. That's a hard thing to do. He says, for in so doing, you will heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. We can never overcome evil with anger, with hate. None of that stuff will ever overcome evil. He says the only way to overcome evil is with good. With the goodness, with the love of God, with the grace of God. And I know if your enemy is hungry, feed him. Yeah, right. We wait, like we talked about this morning in Bible study, we're waving as we go by. And you know what? We drive by and one of us in the car says, man, they're starving. The other one says, yep, that's what they deserve. And we keep on going, right? God says, no, you need to feed them. Hold your hand out to these people. Love them. Be good to them. And I always think about how can I do that to people who treat me badly, do me wrong, and all that stuff. And the number one thing is, I put two things here. First one is to have a right view of myself. A right view of myself. You know, as we get saved, and I think we get saved and we start doing good and we start loving God and we forget who we were. We do. We forget that we're a person who probably caused somebody a whole bunch of grief, a whole bunch of problems, whole bunch of this. And if you never caused a person a bunch of problems, guess what? Your sin caused Jesus a lot of problems. That hung him on a cross. And we have to have that view to understand, look, I'm no better than these other people. It's kind of like when I turn out on the road sometimes and people get to driving around me and I'm like, idiot, right? Pull up to us. You know, you're driving down the road and these people drive and you're, oh, idiot. And one day I was driving down the road and one thing I used to do is brake check people. You get up on me, you was gonna catch some tail lights. And I quit doing that. I will not brake check nobody on the highway or anywhere. And the reason why I don't is because I get to thinking about things and you know, people do stuff on the road and call you an idiot or people drive by flipping you off when you do something wrong. And I was thinking one day, how many times have I done exactly what they're doing? Driving my car. How many times have I followed somebody too close? How many times have I cut somebody off? How many times have I just fill in the blank? Just check the box. And it, you know, that's Proverbs 19:11 says, the discretion of a man makes him slow to anger. That means what he's saying, the wisdom or the wisdom or the knowledge of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression. You see that when I understand who I am, when I understand where I come from, who I used to be, it's easy for me to overlook somebody else's problems and issues, right? It's not that I overlook them to the point to where it's like, I don't see what you're doing, keep on doing it. But it's easy for me to have grace and love for somebody, for anybody. of that matter. And I have to understand, and Cassie, she wrote this down, had Kirsten write it down in her notes, but a guy last night was listening to his testimony, and he said, hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And when we get angry, or when we get hurt and we get angry, as a Christian, we got to learn to deal with that stuff so that we don't hurt people. But that's why a lot of people hurt people, because they've been hurt, they've been angered, and then the only way they know how to do is express it. So they hurt people and make people angry, and it rolls on downhill. But as Christians, we have to put a stop to that stuff. We do. We have to deal with it. We have to take it, because the only place that we can have victory from anger or any of that stuff is at the cross. That's the only place. That's where it's dealt with. And like I said, I have to have a right view of myself, but I also have to deal with unforgiveness if I have that in my heart. That's one of the biggest, is harboring stuff and not truly forgiving people. It is hard. We like to say, oh, I forgive them, but do you really forgive them? When they mess up, do you bring it back up? Because that's where the rubber meets the road. You can say you forgive somebody, but when they do you wrong again, do you dig back into this? Or is that no longer there? You didn't forgive them if you digging back in here. If you keep reaching back here, there's something going on there. And I love right there in Colossians 3:13, it says, "Bear with one another and forgive any complaint you may have against someone else. Forgive as the Lord forgave you." Look, he keeps saying, "Forgive as God forgave you." He says the same thing in Ephesians. Look, be kind and tender-hearted to one another,